These are the last four chapters of the Julian section in Wonder. My dream. That night I dreamt about Augie. I don't remember the details of the dream, but I think we were being chased by Nazis. Augie was captured, but I had a key to let him out. And in my dream, I think I saved him. Or maybe that's what I told myself when I woke up. Sometimes it's hard to know with dreams. In this dream, the Nazis all looked like Darth Vader's Imperial officers anyway, so it's hard to put too much meaning into dreams. But what was really interesting to me when I thought about it is that it had been a dream, not a nightmare. And in the dream, Augie and I were on the same side. I woke up super early because of the dream, and I didn't go back to sleep. I kept thinking about Augie, Torteau, Julian, the heroic boy I was named for. It's weird. This whole time I had been thinking about Augie like he was an enemy. But when Grande Marie told me that story, I don't know, it all kind of just sank in with me. I kept thinking of how ashamed the original Julian would be to know that someone who carried his name had been so mean. I kept thinking about how sad Grande Marie was when she told the story, how she could remember all the details even though it happened like 70 years ago. 70 years! Would Augie remember me in 70 years? Would he still remember the mean things I called him? I don't want to be remembered for stuff like that. I would want to be remembered the way Grande Marie remembers Torteau. Mr. Tushman, I get it now. Remorse. Remorse. I got up as soon as it was light out and wrote this note. Dear Augie, I want to apologize for the stuff I did last year. I've been thinking about it a lot. You didn't deserve it. I wish I could have a do-over. I would be nicer. I hope you don't remember how mean I was when you're 80 years old. Have a nice life, Julian. P.S. If you're the one who told Mr. Tushman about the notes, don't worry. I don't blame you. When Grande Marie woke up that afternoon, I read the note. I'm proud of you, Julian, she said, squeezing my shoulder. Do you think he'll forgive me? She thought about it. That is up to him, she answered. And in the end, mon cher, all that matters is that you forgive yourself. You are learning from your mistake, like I learned with Torteau. Do you think Torteau would forgive me? I asked if he knew his namesake had been so mean. She kissed my hand. Torteau would forgive you, she answered, and I could tell she meant it. Going home. I realized I didn't have Augie's address, so I wrote another email to Mr. Brown asking him if I could send him my note to Augie and have him mail it to him for me. Mr. Brown emailed me back immediately. He was happy to do it. He also said that he was proud of me. I felt good about that. Like really good. And it felt good to feel good. Kind of hard to explain, but I guess I was tired of feeling like I was this awful kid. I'm not. Like I keep seeing over and over again, I'm just an ordinary kid, a typical, normal, ordinary kid who made a mistake. But now, I was trying to make it right. My parents arrived a week later. Mom couldn't stop hugging and kissing me. This was the longest I'd ever been away from home. I was excited to tell them about my email from Mr. Brown and the note I had written to Augie, but they told me their news first. We're suing the school, said Mom excitedly. What? I cried. Dad is suing them for breach of contract, she said. She was practically chirping. I looked at Grande Marie, who didn't say anything. We were all having dinner. They had no right to withdraw the enrollment contract, Dad explained calmly like a lawyer. Not before we had been placed in another school. Hal told me in his office that they would wait to rescind their enrollment until after we had gotten accepted into another school. And they would return the money. We had a verbal agreement. But I was going to another school anyway, I said. Doesn't matter, he said. Even if they returned the money, it's the principle of the thing. What principle? Said Grande Marie. She got up from the table. This is nonsense, Jules. Stupid. Stupid. Complete and utter nonsense. Maman, said Dad. He looked really surprised. So did Mom. You should drop the stupidity, said Grande Marie. You don't really know the details, Maman, said Dad. I know all the details, she yelled, shaking her fist in the air. She looked fierce. The boy was wrong, Jules. Your boy was in the wrong. He knows it. You know it. He did bad things to that other boy, and he is sorry for them, and you should let it be. Mom and Dad looked at each other. With all due respect, Sarah, said Mom, I think we know what's best for. No, you don't know anything, yelled Grandmarie. You don't know. You two are too busy with lawsuits and stupid things like that. Maman, said Dad. She's right, Dad, I said. It was all my fault. All that stuff with Augie. It was my fault. I was mean to him for no reason. It was my fault Jack punched me. I had called Augie a freak. What? Said Mom. I wrote all those awful notes, I said quickly. I did mean stuff. It was my fault. I was the bully, Mom. It wasn't anyone else's fault but mine. Mom and Dad didn't seem to know what to answer. Instead of sitting there like two idiots, said Grandmarie, who always said things as they were, you should be praising Julian for this admission. He is taking responsibility. He is owning up for his mistakes. It takes such courage to do this kind of thing. Yes, of course, said Dad, rubbing his chin and looking at me, but I don't think you understand all the legal ramifications. The school took our tuition and refused to return it, which, blah, 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 said Grandmarie, waving him away. I wrote him an apology, I said, to Augie. I wrote him an apology, and I sent it in the mail, and I apologized for the way I acted. You what? Said Dad. He was getting mad now. And I told Mr. Brown the truth, too. I wrote Mr. Brown a long email telling him the whole story. Julian, said Dad, frowning angrily, why did you do that? I told you I didn't want you to write anything that acknowledged. Jules, said Grandmarie loudly, waving her hand in front of Dad's face. Tu as un cerveau comme un sandwich au fromage. I couldn't help but laugh at this. Dad cringed. What did she say? Said Mom, who didn't know French. Grandmarie just told Dad he has a brain like a cheese sandwich, I said. Maman, Dad said sternly, like someone who's about to begin a long lecture. But Mom reached out and put her hand on Dad's arm. Jules, she said quietly, I think your mom is right. Unexpected. Sometimes people surprise you. Never in a million years would I have thought that my mom would be the one to back down from anything, so I was so completely shocked by what she had just said, and I could tell Dad was too. He looked at Mom like he couldn't believe what she was saying. Grandmarie was the only one who didn't seem surprised. Are you kidding me? Dad said to Mom. Mom shook her head slowly. Jules, we should end this. We should move on. Your mother is right. Dad raised his eyebrows. I knew he was mad, but trying not to show it. You're the one who got us on this warpath, Melissa. I know, she answered, taking her glasses off. Her eyes were really shiny. I know, and I thought it was the right thing to do at the time. I still don't think Tushman was right, the way he handled everything, but I'm ready to put all this behind us now, Jules. I think we should just let go and move forward. She shrugged. She looked at me. It was very big of Julian to reach out to that boy, Jules. It takes a lot of guts to do that. She looked back at Dad. We should be supportive. I am supportive, of course, said Dad, but this is such a complete about-face, Melissa. I mean... He shook his head and rolled his eyes at the same time. Mom sighed. She didn't know what to say. Look here, said Grandmarie. Whatever Melissa did, she did it because she wanted Julian to be happy, and that is all. He is happy now. You can see it in his eyes. For the first time in a long time, your son looks completely happy. That's right, said Mom, wiping a tear from her face. I felt kind of sorry for Mom at the moment. I could tell she felt bad about some of the things she'd done. Dad, I said, please don't sue the school. I don't want that. Okay, Dad, please? Dad leaned back in his chair and made a soft whistle sound, like he was blowing out a candle in slow motion. Then he started clicking his tongue against the roof of his mouth. It was a long minute that he stayed like that. We just watched him. Finally, he sat back up in the chair and looked at us. He shrugged. Okay, he said, his palms up. I'll drop the lawsuit. We'll just walk away from the tuition money. Are you sure that's what you want, Melissa? Mom nodded. I'm sure. Grandmarie sighed. Victory at last, she mumbled into her wineglass. Starting over. We went home a week later, but not before Grandmarie took us to a very special place, the village she grew up in. It seemed amazing to me that she had never told Dad the whole Tourteau story. The only thing he knew was that a family in Dansvilliers had helped her during the war, but she had never told him any of the details. She never told him that his own grandmother had died in a concentration camp. Maman, how come you never told me any of this? Dad asked her after a while when we were driving in the car to her village. Oh, you know me, Jules, she answered. I do not like to dwell on the past. Life is ahead of us. If we spend too much time looking backwards, we cannot see where we are going. Much of the village had changed. Too many bombs and grenades had been dropped. Most of the original houses had been destroyed in the war. Grand Marie's school was gone. There was really nothing much to see, just Starbucks and shoe stores. But then we drove to Danvilliers, which is where Julian had lived. That village was intact. She took us to the barn where she'd stayed for 2 years. The old farmer, who lived there now, let us walk around and take a look. Grand Marie found her initials scrawled in a little nook in one of the horse stalls, which is where she would hide under piles of hay whenever the Nazis were nearby. Grand Marie stood in the middle of the barn with one hand on her face as she looked around. She seemed so tiny there. How are you doing, Grand Marie? I asked her. Me? Ah, well, she said, smiling, tilting her head. I lived. I remember thinking when I was staying here that the smell of horse manure would never leave my nostrils. But I lived, and Jules was born because I lived, and you were born. So, what is the smell of horse manure against all that? Perfume and time make everything easier to bear. Now, there's one more place I want to visit. We drove about 10 minutes away to a tiny cemetery on the outskirts of the village. Grand Marie took us directly to a tombstone at the edge of the graveyard. There was a small white ceramic plaque on the tombstone. It was the shape of a heart. Vivienne Baumer, from 27th April 1905, deceased 21st of November 1985. Jean-Paul Baumier, born 15th of May 1901, deceased 5th of July 1985. Julian Auguste Baumier, born 10th of October 1930, deceased 1944. I looked at Grand Marie as she stood looking at the plaque. She kissed her fingers and then reached down to touch it. She was trembling. They treated me like their daughter, she said, tears rolling down her cheeks. She started sobbing. I took her hand and kissed it. Mom took Dad's hand. What does the plaque say? She asked softly. Dad cleared his throat. Here rests Vivienne Baumer, he translated softly, and Jean-Paul Baumer, mother and father of Julien Auguste Baumer, born October 10th, 1930, killed June 1944. May he walk forever tall in the garden of God. New York. When we got back to NYC a week before my school was scheduled to start. It was nice being back in my room again. My things were all the same, but I felt, I don't know, a little different. I can't explain it. I felt like I wasn't really starting over. I'll help you unpack in a minute, said Mom, running off to the bathroom, and stood as we stepped through the door. I'm good, I answered. I could hear Dad in the living room listening to our answering machine messages. I started unpacking my suitcase. Then I heard a familiar voice on the machine. I stopped what I was doing and walked into the living room. Dad looked up and paused the machine. Then he replayed the message for me to hear. It was Augie Pullman. Oh, hi, Julian, said the message. Yeah, so, I just wanted to tell you I got your note. And, yeah, thanks for writing it. No need to call me back. I just wanted to say hey. We're good. Oh, and by the way, it wasn't me who told Tushman about the notes, just so you know, or Jack or Summer. I really don't know how he found out, not that it matters anyway. So, okay, anyway, I hope you like your new school. Good luck. Bye. Click. Dad looked at me to see how I would react. Wow, I said. I didn't expect that at all. Are you going to call him back? Said Dad. I shook my head. Nah, I answered. I'm too chicken. Dad walked over me and put his hand on my shoulder. I think you've proven that you're anything but chicken, he said. I'm proud of you, Julian. Very proud of you. He leaned over and hugged me. I smiled. Thank you, Dad. I hope so. I hope so. The end.